There are many skills and techniques that a fly tyer must use in order to create flies that look beautiful to us and especially edible to a fish. In this video, I've assorted 10 skills that a beginner fly tyer must master in order to begin creating such flies. Each skill in this video is explained in depth while also being suitable for a beginner to learn. The skills in this video will build on and apply to the last, so be sure to stay to the end to see the whole picture. The first skill is as basic as it is important to every fly that you will ever tie. Your ability to keep constant tension on anything you wrap around the hook will be obvious when the fly is done. Here, if I exaggerate what improper thread tension looks like, my thread will not land where I want it to, and it simply will not be able to attach other materials to the hook. What is more common and can be overlooked as a mistake is lobbing the thread over the hook like this. Even though half of the wrap has tension, the underside is lacking. Proper thread tension is uniform and constant over the entire circumference of the wrap. Now, do not mistake this for having excessive tension, as then your thread will break. And while attaching materials to the hook, like the tail of this fly, keeping proper thread tension is still necessary. Also, sometimes when you are tying materials off of the hook, it is not fully possible to have constant thread tension while wrapping, so lobbing the thread is the best you can do. Understanding the behavior of your thread is also important when tying flies with thread as the sole body material. Most begin with a UTC 70 denier thread like the one right here. You can see that it lays very flat as I wrap. However, after a while it begins to cord up and not lay as flat. This is because with each wrap of the bobbin, the thread gets twisted clockwise. So to combat this, simply spin your bobbin counterclockwise to untwist the thread. This allows it to lay flat again, helping you to tie a smooth thread body. Helicoptering is an easy way to remove excess wire flush with your thread. When done properly, there is no sharp wire edge sticking out of the thread wraps. After wrapping the wire up the body of the zebra midge, take securing wraps on top of and behind the wire, trying your best to keep proper tension. Then grip the wire close to the tie-off point and spin it until it breaks off flush with the thread. Creating dubbing noodles is the most common way to apply dubbing to a fly, but if done improperly, you may have used the wrong amount of dubbing and it won't even stay on the thread. So, grab a very small wisp of dubbing from the packet. You can know if you have too much if it doesn't float down to the ground like a feather. Then twist the dubbing on the thread tight. You can twist either way, just make sure it's the same way each time. It is better to have a long and thin dubbing noodle rather than a shorter one with too much dubbing. Then wrap the dubbing on the hook just as if it was thread, remembering to keep proper tension. If you want the fly to be more fuzzy, go back in with a dubbing brush at the end to tease out more fibers. Being able to make measurements will allow you to be more in control of tail lengths, wing lengths, and leg lengths, making your flies more consistent each time. In general, the tail of your fly should be about a hook shank in length, the distance from the eye to where the hook starts to bend. So, take whatever material you have for the tail and measure about a hook shank in length from the point where you are holding it. Here I'm making the tail a touch longer than the hook shank. Then, without moving the measurement in your fingers, transfer the correct length to where you want the body of the fly to end and the tail to start. Then, without changing the length of the tail, switch hands and secure the material to the hook, ensuring the correct length tail. The pinch wrap is necessary to attach materials to the hook that easily spin without extra support. Here, if I try to wrap the marabou feather without support, it wraps around the hook with the thread. So to avoid this, first transfer your fingers to the thread without moving the measurement from the last step. And so the pinch wrap is exactly how it sounds. Take your bobbin up and pinch the thread. With it still pinched, complete the wrap. This secures the marabou to the hook without it sliding around. You can then wrap to the base of the tail to fully secure it. Wrapping body materials is obviously very important for your fly. There is an easy way to wrap body material around the hook without letting them slip out of place, allowing you to create a neater and more durable fly. Before wrapping the body material, make sure the thread is at the same point where you tied it in. Begin wrapping the material while the thread is still there, going behind the bobbin with each wrap, pushing the thread forward as you go. This ensures that the material will not slip and allow you to easily tie off the material at the end, as the thread is always directly under the material. Using Hackle can be a pain sometimes, but with the correct preparation, it is no hassle at all to tie in Hackle with the barbs pointing up every time. Before you tie it in, it is necessary to prep the feather. Notice how there are fine and stiff fibers coming down from the tip of the feather, and near the thick base they are fuzzy and soft. Find the point where the two sides meet and strip some of the softer fibers, revealing the stem of the feather. Take your scissors and cut off the fuzzy end. Then strip off a few of the stiff hackle fibers from one side. The importance of this step will be evident in a second. Begin by tying in the bare stem tightly. To make sure that it doesn't slip, it can be a good idea to fold it back and tie it down tight again, but that is not fully necessary. Then begin wrapping the feather so that the side that you stripped a few more fibers off of lays down first. This will allow all of the fibers to lay perfectly upright at the head of the fly and as you wrap down the body. The only way to finish off your fly, the whip finish can seem too complicated at first, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes quick and easy to do. Notice how the whip finisher has a hook at the top and a groove at the bottom, and it has a ball bearing connected to the handle, allowing it to rotate freely. The first step is to grip the ball bearing and up a little bit on the metal, preventing the tool to rotate. Then use the hook of the whip finisher to take the thread, and use the bobbin to wrap the thread around the groove. Then, manually rotate the whip finisher so that a right triangle is formed with the thread. The thread coming from the bobbin should be in front of the thread coming from the head of the fly. Once you have this correct, manually rotate the whip finisher again, this time by 180 degrees, while bringing the tool above the hook. When this is complete, the thread coming from the bobbin should be behind the thread coming from the head of the fly. Now pull the thread coming from the bobbin so that it lays flat on the head of the fly, where you want the knot to be seated. Now you can let go of the ball bearing and slide your fingers to the handle of the tool, allowing it to rotate freely. With this complete, you can rotate the tool around the hook, forming the knot. Make sure you have enough spare thread coming from the bobbin. Once you have 3 to 5 wraps, slide the thread off of the groove first, then pull the bobbin, allowing the last loop of thread to lay on the hook, and finally, release the thread by removing the hook of the whip finisher. Pull the thread tight and snip it off. It is almost impossible to perfect all of these skills without the most important tip in this video: practice. If you practice each of these skills, you will be able to create flies that will entice fish and the fisherman who buys them. Thanks for watching.